So I'm Mark Tungate. I'm the editorial director of the Epica Awards. And Epica is a festival judged by journalists. So it's judged by journalists who write about advertising and communications. We get about 4,000 entries a year from all over the world. And what makes it interesting, I think, is that, as I said in my speech, the worlds of journalism and creativity are coming closer together. Because you may say, well, why should journalists be able to judge advertising even if they write about it? What I find as a writer and a journalist myself is that I'm increasingly asked to work with brands on creating content, whether that means helping them to create their own magazines, writing scripts for films, helping them on digital media like Twitter and Snapchat. So I think that now being a writer also means being a copywriter as well. So journalism and creativity coming closer together, that's really the subject of my speech.
Why do you believe is it only now that creativity and journalism are finally starting to come more intensively together?
It's a good question. I think before there was this idea that there had to be a solid wall between editorial content and advertising. And I think the nature of the digital world is that that wall is becoming broken down. So, for example, you see that on TV, for example, you see that people are watching less and less broadcast TV. They're watching content on their computer or they're downloading it. They're watching it in other ways. So they're not sitting through the old-fashioned 30-second commercials as they used to. And so the brands are trying to find different ways of communicating with consumers. So they're creating what's often referred to as native advertising, which looks more like editorial content than traditional advertising. So I think that's why that change is happening.
Do you believe that this development can be a threat to journalistic ethics, that journalism needs to stay independent, unbiased, uninfluenced?
I think that's partly the case. I think, unfortunately, because I do agree with that in a way, but I think also that there's always been not really a lie, but a kind of piece of misinformation in journalism. In fact, that journalism has always been paid for by advertising. Newspapers can't exist apart from the advertisements inside them. So, while journalists often used to have a rather snobbish attitude to advertising and pretend that they weren't involved in it, actually they were already deeply involved in advertising, whether they liked it or not. So, for me personally, I don't have a problem with it. I think that you should make sure the audience know where the difference lies. So I don't like native advertising that's deliberately disguised as genuine editorial content. I think you should let the consumer know what they're dealing with. But as a journalist, I have no problem writing native advertising as long as it's not disguised.
So as long as everybody's playing with open cards, there should be no problems.
Transparency is the rule, I think.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.